This episode was recorded before the mid-air collision over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. in January 2025, and only a few weeks after the terrible crash in Korea. Our hearts go out to all the survivors and the friends and family of the victims of plane crashes and other accidents around the world. And this latest tragedy is another timely reminder of how the topic of today's episode is always, sadly, relevant. But we hope you enjoy this episode as much as you are informed by it. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to Just Interesting, episode 162, or, as Alex pointed out to me before we started recording, our 200th video on the YouTube channel. Because we do video essays as well, which are now being on our second channel, Uncovered. But thank you all for joining us on this most auspicious occasion where we reach the big 200. Martin and Alex are both joining me. The three of us are back together, the Holy Trinity. After a brief absence, Martin was away in another country. He was replaced by his favourite stand-in, Daniel Radcliffe. And we have a picture, actually, of Martin on a plane, looking pretty shocked. But that's that's Daniel Radcliffe. Sorry, let's get Martin back on screen, shall we?
You can't tell the difference though. That's why you booked the gig, Martin, as his body double. So exactly. It makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it does.
We did actually get a comment in the last episode from someone who said like they weren't wearing their glasses and they actually did mistake you for Daniel Radcliffe for you. Then you can see it from a certain angle. Like you genuinely can. Yeah.
Bizarrely, yeah.
Very strange. Very strange. Yes, no, I haven't played his body double, not since the Philosopher's Stone, anyway. So there we go.
That's a while ago.
Yeah, there are these laws around, kids working, and incredibly self-conscious about the back of his head as well. So many scenes in Harry Potter where he's running away. It's me. Actually, talking of body doubles, did you know that the body double / stunt double and young Hagrid was played by Martin Bayliss, the ex-rugby player.
Yeah, with a really cool mask.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah. I mean, it was just funny because he's often on the rugby shows I watch, and I had no idea until about 4 days ago. He's a commentator and a presenter now. Yeah,
that's so funny. You got the voice of Hagrid in your head, but not that Hagrid.
Which, of course, I knew because I worked with him closely.
So Robin,
yes.
Is it Harry Potter that we're focusing on this episode? Is that
It is not. As my subtle clue at the beginning of the introduction did indicate, we are looking at advice and statistics on how to survive a plane crash. A cheerful topic for the new year, January 2025. Yes. We thought we'd follow up on continue our series of useful advice videos.
It's just
little how-tos.
It's just a PSA, it's a public service announcement. Here's just some facts and some little things you can do to stay safe, I guess, because obviously a lot of this is well within your control.
Yes.
Yes. You can do so much to mitigate the deadliness of a plane crash that you are involved in. But that's the point. We're going to look at some of the advice, official advice that's given, and maybe some unofficial advice as well. And of course, we'll be looking at statistics. And often people bandy about the whole, statistically, flying is the safest way to travel. I want to know if it really is, if the statistics bear that out. So we'll be looking at that. But before we do that, I would like to say a massive thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and YouTube members who are just fantastic folks who support us and help keep the lights on and keep us going, because there are actually a surprising number of expenses to running a podcast. It's not free to publish this thing. And I particularly like to say thank you to Scott Joel, Amy Licious, Cindy Hafner, Rashad Najar, Caleb Wilkerson, Kurt Jones, John Baker, Janie, Henny Ruffle, Nicholas Dill, Emmett Tapia, Ahmad, Peaswad, Josh Chomatek, A Filthy Casual, and Simon Workman. Thank you so much to everybody who supports us on Patreon and is a YouTube member. And you can get exclusive a little more interesting episodes where we talk about even more stuff and are even less held back than we are in these slightly random, unpredictable stream of conscious episodes that you suffer through, but very warmly listened to. Thank you very much to everybody.
No, thank
it's
you.
even more unhinged over on the Patreon exclusive side, for sure.
Like a pinball machine. No, but thank you. I mean, just some of those names have been sticking around for so long. Very generous and very much appreciated. So thank you.
I would like to know properly how you both are, especially because one of you, I believe, is about to take a flight in the near future, and the other one has just been on some pretty dramatic flights. There's a film out right now, directed by Mel Gibson, starring Mark Wahlberg, called Flight Risk, and that's actually a fly-on-the-wall documentary about what Martin just went through on his journeys around the world. And I think also, as those of you watching the YouTube video will see, that Alex is in a different location, and that's because he's gone to Panama to spy on developments with the Panama Canal. He's our reporter on the scene. So in future episodes, we'll be giving you updates on that situation. Not really, just in case you're wondering I'm being serious. I'm not being serious. This is all just stream of consciousness crap right now. Because I haven't flown for a while. I'm not planning to fly for a while. These two are the closest I'm going to get to a plane accident. Unless a plane lands in my humble abode, which is a question we would like to ask, actually, about what constitutes a fatality in a plane crash. If you're curious, I think the statistics we'll be discussing focus on onboard passengers or crew.
I imagine so.
Not on people who are caught
so
in
if
the
planes start
maelstrom.
dropping out of the sky, then
we're okay.
That's on you. You shouldn't have been there, basically.
Literally, it's on you. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But yeah, how are you, gentlemen? Martin, how are you?
Yeah, no, I'm well, as you guys know, I'm relatively tired because I've been on a different time zone for the last, up until quite recently. I was in the land down under, and yeah, so lots of travel by plane.
You were on the other side of the planet from
exactly.
me and
Strange feeling.
You could feel the
and
distance.
a lot of terrible Chinese airplane food. Which actually was the most brutal part about the whole thing, was being offered the same meal on both legs of the journey twice. So that's whoever has to
edit this podcast, please at this point just input a tiny violin in the corner, just a small violin slowly fading in and out.
I feel like there's a soundbite we could add as well.
Great.
An appropriate soundbite about the succulent Chinese meal that Martin just enjoyed.
What is the crime? Eating a meal?
A succulent Chinese meal.
It's a really strange things that like there was a little pot, and I thought it was a yogurt. I was like, that's going to be a yogurt, isn't it? No, it wasn't. It was open up, and it was just like liquid. I was like, oh, what's below this kind of ready translucent liquid? Got down there. It's some like kidney beans in sweetened water.
Ooh.
Nice.
Interesting.
That sounds quite all right, actually.
Interesting.
Also, kidney beans is an interesting one to give a bunch of passengers on a flight, isn't it? You're going to clog up that toilet.
It's a gas-powered plane, folks.
So a little bit strange, and some long legs of that journey. But yeah, I mean, I did think about it, as you always do, especially on takeoff and landing, right? You're like, oh, something happens here, it'll be quick. Wouldn't know too much about it, but yeah, it's at the back of your mind, especially when there's been the recent crash in Korea in particular. So I don't know whether others will think about it too, but I imagine so.
Yeah, it's pretty horrendous. December 29th, wasn't it, in 2024? New Year's present for the families of all those victims, this plane crash in Korean airport. And as far as I saw, arguably unnecessary, wasn't it? Because it was a crash landing that was going quite well until it hit this massive concrete bunker that they'd built to house some of the monitoring equipment on the runway. Is that right?
Yeah. No.
They lost
birds, didn't
they? They lost an engine from a flock of birds, and they went round once, and then I think for whatever reason the landing gear didn't deploy.
Right.
So they went straight directly on the belly of the runway, but they went down way later on the runway than they would otherwise, presumably maybe to try and slow it as much as possible. But there was that cement wall at the end of the runway, which, you know the rest. But no, what a tragedy.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we thought we would discuss how you could survive a similar tragedy.
Good luck with that one.
Well, 2 people did survive.
Ooh.
Yes. And they were both crew, weren't they?
Yeah, they were both cabin crew.
Cabin crew, right at the back of the plane.
Sat at the back. And the back of the plane, the fuselage separated from the rest of the plane, so I think that helped. And yeah, they just escaped with injuries. But yeah, I mean, I think in all the kind of like statistics and stuff, people do say, don't they, if you sit towards the back of the plane, you have a slight advantage of surviving than people that sit in the middle or towards the front. But that's a big kind of asterisk next to that, because it depends entirely on the type of crash. That's not always the case.
Yeah, for example, Professor Helen Muir, who was director of the Cranfield Institute for Safety, Risk and Reliability, said explicitly to the BBC, people who say it's best to sit at the back of the plane because if the plane crash lands, it'll be the front that hits the ground where you'll have the most danger. But if there's a fire and the plane's on fire at the back, then you're better to sit at the front. So the answer is to go to your seat as allocated, but to make the most of whatever opportunities you have near you to escape, should you need to do so.
Yes. Yeah, no, all about those safety instructions and being near an emergency exit. And I mean, definitely one of the things that comes up, time and again, is just being very much aware of your surroundings, because statistically, you're much more likely to suffer from a crash landing and smoke inhalation as being a cause of death than you are from, being obliterated by the crash. So getting out quickly and being near an emergency exit is important. And oftentimes, unless you're in that emergency row, that means being in an aisle seat tends to be better, just because there is that quicker access to the exits than being in a window seat. So for comfort, knock yourself out. Well, don't literally knock yourself out. That would not be good for escaping. But go for the window. But to get out quickly, the aisle might be your better bet.
That's quite sobering, because I prefer a window seat. So
don't we all?
Seriously reconsider what I do in future.
I think it was I don't know if it was this one that I've got, but Pacific South Airlines flight 1771. I think that this was a hijacking that resulted in crashing in the ocean, and a lot of the people on board didn't heed the advice of inflating your life jacket outside of the plane.
Oh dear.
And that was part of the problem. Like people wanted to be prepared, ready to go out, but don't do that until you're out of the plane, like legitimately, because you'll get caught in the plane in your life vest, and a lot of people drowned, I think, because they had inflated it, after landing and like before they landed in the water, and then it got stuck and couldn't get out.
That's a horrendous irony. Yeah.
That's pretty horrible.
This is something I've always thought growing up. Whenever someone said, "Oh, flying is the safest way to travel," and I'd say, "Okay, sure," but I have a feeling that as long as my plane doesn't crash, yes, it's the safest way to travel. But if my plane does crash, I'm going to die. It's a binary situation with a plane in my mind. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I've got a stat from the International Air Transport Association. In 2021, the global accident rate for large commercial aircraft was around 1 accident per 0.9 million flights, or in other words, one accident for every 900,000 flights. Okay. And of those, fatalities are rare. In recent years, commercial aviation accidents result in fatalities have dropped significantly, often numbering fewer than 300 per year on passenger flights, which for context, in 2019 anyway, obviously things changed a bit after 2020, but there was over 4 billion passengers who flew commercially in 2019. So 300 compared to 4 billion. That's
that's quite small.
Bad.
Yeah.
Not bad odds, really. Yeah.
So what is that? Yeah. 1 in or 3 in 40 million. 1 in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't maths, but you know what I mean.
It's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
In fact, that compares quite favorably to being struck by lightning, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
You got to be pretty unlucky, yeah, for anything to go wrong, or for a fatality to occur. Because also, you have accidents that happen, but they obviously don't result in a fatality. Look at the incident with Boeing. Was it last year when the door fell off? Incidents like that, obviously, that would be very traumatic, very scary.
Yes.
But that's an example of an accident that resulted in 0 fatalities.
Yeah, true. I think it becomes even more stark as well when we look at, deaths per mile between different modes of transport as well. So, got a statistic here that says that between 2000 and 2010, commercial airlines in the United States specifically had approximately 0.2 deaths per 10 billion passenger miles. And when we look at comparing this to car travel, the fatality rate is 1.5 deaths per 100 million vehicle miles, or 150 deaths per 10 billion miles. So we're talking about 0.2 versus 150. So, so what's that? You're 750 times more likely to die in a car death in the US specifically than you are from air travel, which is quite interesting.
It's quite encouraging. Yeah.
Also, what sometimes I do, this is maybe just a personal hack. If you're like me, I'm not the best at dealing with flying. I'm not a huge fan of it. But sometimes before I go and fly on a plane, I look at flight radar just to see how many planes are currently in the sky all around the world, and nothing happens to any of them. Just like that visual of, wow, there are hundreds of planes in the sky right now, all going to their destinations like clockwork. And it's so rare that any instance comes up. So there's a pro tip for you if you're a bit nervous of flying, like me. And I'm flying on Saturday. So thanks, Robin, for just suggesting this topic.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's
you're
fantastic.
I'll tell you what's not a good tip if you're a bit nervous of flying. And that is on your little screen in front of you, there's often a mode in which you can look at the different camera angles. So you can look outside the left window, the right window. You can look at the camera from the landing gear. So I was looking across at someone who was watching it when we were landing. Can't remember which leg it was, but one of the legs. And I was like, man, if we crash now, I'm going to be watching this on someone's screen. Like, what a way to go! Watch the landing gear not deploy, and us just smash into a million pieces.
He died doing what he loved, though, watching TV.
But isn't that kind of? I feel like that's a fantastic metaphor for the state of society in the 21st century. In the 2020s, somebody dies watching a live stream of their own crash. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You can instantly, if you are live streaming, quickly get a quick react video up to your plane, your own plane crash. Whoa, man, this is crazy.
I've got from a website called Security Specialists, who specialize, as their name suggests, in security consultation, have a list of 7 things to do to help you survive a plane crash. Would you like to know what they are?
I think we would.
I think so.
I'd like to know what your reactions are to each one as well.
Okay.
Because some of these may
how effective we think they'd actually be in reality.
Yeah, or any other things that spring to mind, such as number 1, before you leave for the airport, make sure you're wearing clothing and shoes you can run in.
Hey, that's generally good advice.
Yeah, I mean,
your ability to move quickly can be.
But...
Well, specifically, they say don't wear high heels, as they can puncture evacuation slides.
It's like, Alex, why are you wearing flippers?
Who doesn't get on a plane wearing comfy clothes though? Like who's choosing high heels?
I can imagine
some
flight. Business class passengers on their way to a high powered deal. Maybe not on the long haul, but on a short haul ish.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. I like it.
Also, good advice in the sense of they elaborate and say, as well as don't wear high heels because they can puncture the slides. Don't take your shoes off because you don't want to end up running through fire or debris without foot protection. Okay, advice number 2. Bring a car seat for infants and toddlers. I'm not sure.
Is that not like,
is that allowed?
I was going to say, is that allowed? But also, if it is allowed, is it not required? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't know. You guys would probably know more about that than me.
There are certain children don't get allocated seats.
Yeah, if you're under 2 or whatever, right?
Yeah, so you have to be held by the parent.
Yeah.
So that car seat thing must apply to the US, presumably, for internal flights, something like that. Right? Certainly in the UK, I don't think you can take a car seat on for a child under 2.
Even just the customs. Imagine taking a car seat through customs.
Yeah, this is strange advice.
Anyway, okay.
Yeah. Number 3, it's a biggie. If possible, try to sit in the back of the plane.
There we go. But as we've already said, it very much varies, doesn't it?
Yeah, some crashes, definitely the tail goes down first in some crashes, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, as Dr. Steve Veronneau, head of the bioinformatics research team at the FAA, said, one would have to know how it was going to hit the ground in order to know where is safest to sit. So be psychic, be Nostradamus. But then if you're psychic, why are you on the plane in the first place? You just
why you got on a crash plane?
Yeah, get off the plane.
Silly.
Bad thinking. So this
I am sat at the back on Saturday, just FYI, in case this comes up on the news, then
did you pick your seat?
I did actually choose quite far back in the plane for this very reason. Yeah.
Wow.
It's just for the
But I mean, it's better than being in the middle either way. It's Ryanair. It's not going to make a difference. It's going to be a horrible experience.
The plane's made of cardboard. If it gets going down, we're done.
I may as well sit at the back.
Are you able to say where you're going, Alex? Is that?
Oh, I'm going back home to Scotland, back to Edinburgh.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Very exciting. Okay. Very exciting. From obviously the Panama Canal, where I currently
am. Fly to Panama today.
I thought you were going somewhere fun.
No, nowhere exotic.
Scotland's lots of fun.
Oh yeah. Scotland is great, but I mean, it's just home.
Home, yeah.
How can you hate a country where you can buy a deep fried haggis, deep fried pizza, and deep fried Mars bar at the same time from the same purveyor of goods? I feel like that's civilization at its peak.
It's weird that they don't put that in the Scottish tourist adverts.
They should do.
They should do that, shouldn't they?
Yeah, they should do that.
Yeah.
So, advice number 4 of 7 is listen to flight attendants and read the safety card. I mean, yeah. I think the unwritten or the unspoken implication of everything that we've said so far is that, generally speaking, the advice they give you at the beginning of a flight is real advice. It's good advice. Here's the exits. Make a straight route to the exits in the event of a crash. Follow the instructions in the event of a crash. And as Alex pointed out earlier with that wonderfully disturbing anecdote, don't inflate your inflatables until you're off the plane.
Yeah.
I imagine one of the most important bits of information that people probably ignore is when they say, head to your nearest emergency exit, and then they say, it may not be immediately visible to you, i.e. it might be behind you. I bet in the event of an actual incident, loads of people are going back and forth and don't know where the exit actually is, right? Yeah.
One thing that always intrigued me about planes, and I get it, well, I know why they do it, it's for commercial reasons, but wouldn't it make sense, especially on the bigger planes, to have one of the crew in amongst the passengers at the halfway point between the exits, so that in the event of a crash they can just stand up and say, you lot go that way and you lot go that way,
Robin, their jobs are already miserable enough. Now you want to they don't even get a respite. Their seat is in the middle of the passengers. You're going to sit them right in the middle so everyone around them at any point can just hand them rubbish and ask for a cup of tea, and they'll be like, I'm on my break. Leave me alone.
Okay, maybe that's
a good point, though.
I hadn't thought of that. Maybe they do that, but it's like plainclothes detectives, plainclothes air stewards are sat amongst the passengers at the halfway points between the doors, so that they'll stand up, take off their coat, flash their badge, and say, "You lot go that way, and you lot go that way."
Or maybe it's just printed on the seat in front. It's like your nearest exit is to your left. Stand up and to your left.
It should be though, yeah.
No, yeah, as in like that would be could be quite a good addition to let you know.
I was on a really small rickety plane, and it was so small there's only room for one seat next to the windows, and then there was the aisle, and then there was one seat. And it was fun, but it was definitely kind of rickety. Shake.
If you're going to be in a plane crash, your odds are much increased by being on this plane.
Well, I actually took comfort in it. Part of me, at first I thought, oh, I'm going to die. And I thought, well, actually, this thing is so flimsy. If we crashed, maybe it would disintegrate before I hit the ground, and I could jump for cover into like a nearby haystack or something. You know, maybe this is the safest way to travel if you're in a crash.
Was it a paper airplane?
You've been conditioned by playing too much Assassin's Creed, Rob, and jumping into hay bales.
I have.
Or is it that classic thing where it's people think they can survive a lift falling down a building by like, what if I jump at the last second? I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Just jump and roll. As long as you roll at the end of it, you're fine, right?
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah.
That's how it works. Yeah, okay. So further advice. Number 5, be vigilant and on guard during takeoff and landing, which is when most plane accidents occur.
But what does that mean, though? Like, if you're on the plane as a passenger, be vigilant. What can you do?
Everyone, I'm incredibly vigilant, and I believe this plane is about to crash.
Everyone, the plane is crashing. Everyone goes into panic.
So South Park with Captain Hindsight. What you should have done. I love that. That's probably one of my favorite episodes, the Captain Hindsight episode. Thank you, Captain Hindsight.
Well,
goodness me.
Number 6.
Be vigilant, silly. Okay.
Yeah, be vigilant during takeoff and landing. Not the rest of the time, just during takeoff and landing. Know how to brace for impact is advice number 6. We haven't actually discussed this yet, bracing for impact.
No.
Because this is kind of, I think people are divided on this, aren't they? The whole, what do they tell you to do? Put your head between your legs and whatever.
Well, there's a low stakes conspiracy about it, isn't there? That people actually, they say to do this not to protect you, but because they want to protect dental records or something very dark, you know. Like
I've heard this as well.
Like it's not actually going to say, like, this is, I'm not saying true at all, and I'm sure you're about to refute this, Robin. But that's the conspiracy theory that I've heard about this, is that like people say, oh yeah, that doesn't actually help, but it does help to protect your teeth from staying in your mouth, you know, something like that.
Well, no, I've heard that too, and I'm susceptible to that kind of thinking.
I think we all are, aren't we?
Yeah. But according to the FAA, the official position of the FAA, I think it's bulletin number 19417 for anyone who wants to look it up. There are 2 primary reasons for bracing for impact. One is to reduce flailing, and the other is to reduce secondary impact. So secondary impact can be reduced by pre-positioning the body, especially the head, against the surface it would strike during impact. And flailing can be reduced by having the occupant flex, bend, or lean forward over their legs in some manner. So flailing, I get that, because that's how you can hurt other passengers with your limbs going, oh, slapping them in the face, pushing them into the window or whatever. Or flailing could also lead to your own bones being broken, because if your arm is swinging one way whilst something comes down on it in the middle of a crash, you could probably, if your limbs are all curled up in a ball, you're less likely for them to be smashed by other things.
Yeah, makes sense.
The secondary impact thing, I guess it's like the reverse of an airbag in a car, isn't it? Where the airbag in a car comes out to fill the space between you and the dashboard, so that your head doesn't crack open on the dashboard when you crash. And this is you making up for the fact that there is no airbag by putting your head against the dashboard before the crash happens. Right?
Yeah. There's no momentum, I guess, into a solid object if you're curled up.
Yeah, I guess there's also a risk to necks breaking as well if you kind of.
Yeah.
I've often wondered about that with airplane seatbelts, because they just go across the waist, don't they? They don't have the chest strap like car seatbelts do.
But that's the same with buses as well, though. Actually, buses do that same thing.
Yeah.
Is it something to do with like they prevent you from going through the windshield, but that might be less of a problem, weirdly, on a plane? Because you're not going to go through the windshield. You might go hurtling through the cabin there. God, why did we choose this topic when I'm flying on Saturday, Robin?
Sorry, Alex.
This is horrible.
Yeah.
Where's flight radar?
It's all right. Just imagine that cool bit from the Liam Neeson film Non-Stop. And when you go flying... Oh, it's on the poster, so it's not a spoiler. But when you go flying through the air in the cabin, you do a backspin and you grab that pistol that's floating in midair and you shoot the bad guy whilst you're in 0G freefall.
Okay.
That's how it goes, Alex. There will be a bad guy on your plane.
That makes me feel better. That makes me feel so much better. Thank you, Robin.
Yeah. There you go. You're welcome.
I imagine that a lot of testing must show that the difference between a lap belt and a seat belt on a plane wouldn't actually make any difference in terms of the dangers, perhaps. Maybe it's just not practical. Yeah, it's not practical. I don't know. But yeah, it's true. Yeah, it will stop you from flying through the plane, and they do make you wear it, don't they? But yeah, I can't imagine it's going to do too much. In case of an actual crash, I guess people won't be flying up and hitting their heads on the ceiling, will they? With a lap belt.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of those things that boils down to, maybe money saving, just doing the lap, but also overall comfort and the fact that this is a very unlikely situation to be in anyway. What do they prioritize? If it's... Yeah. Maybe it's like, okay, it's 80% as safe as the other one, but are we really going to force that on people, that extra 20%?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I do have a note here about the brace position from a pilot who's called Nick Eads, author of The Self-Improver, A Pilot's Journey. And in 2021, which is when this interview was conducted, he had done more time behind the controls of a Boeing 747 than anyone else on the planet.
Whoa.
And he said, yes, the brace position is to stop people suffering neck injuries in a big impact. It's whiplash, basically. It's a way to prevent whiplash. But he raises the point, at least half, maybe 3/4 of passengers on international flights don't speak English as a first language. And if you think about it, what does brace mean? So he's campaigning for a clearer instruction and a better way of telling people the safety instructions on flights, in the English language at least.
Interesting.
Which I think, I've never been on a flight that hasn't used English as one of the languages they give safety instructions.
Yeah, they usually do whatever the native language of the airline is, and then English, don't
they? Yeah.
I mean, they do use pictures, but on most of the airlines, like, the pictures are awful. So they could work on maybe just improving the pictures.
Yeah.
Because a picture speaks 1,000 words.
It does.
It's the universal language.
It does. And going back, just think about those pictures. I don't remember what a picture instructs you to do if you happen to be one of those parents on a plane with the child strapped to your lap because they're under 2 years old and you can't put them in the car seat.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's actually safer for the child because they're on
surrounded by the parent,
a little bit squishy. Yeah,
like the boy in the bubble. Yeah.
I also wonder, like, first class passengers. Are they in a safe? I mean, they're not in a safer spot from the perspective of, like, because they're always at the front of the plane,
and the brace as well.
But like the brace position, like, what if they're facing backwards? Because maybe but they're safer, isn't it? Facing backwards.
There's also in the brace position, there'd be too much room, right? Because I think part of the brace thing is like having your head kind of quite near the seat, right? So you're kind of wedged in. Whereas in first class, you've just got too much room. You've just got too much room to help you. Yeah. Not worth it. Not worth it. No. Dangerous.
Not worth it. But that in-flight meal before you crash, so worth it.
There's kidney beans in some sweetened water. Perfect. Perfect accompaniment to a crash. Yep.
Are there any more
hot
tips?
Yeah, there's one more, I think. Okay. We're coming to the end of this wonderful list of safety guidance. And you're going to love this one. Number 7. Be ready to get out of the plane fast. So,
no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah. And this doesn't say it, but separately I read safety guidance that said the first 2 minutes after a crash are the most important time for getting out of the plane, because after that point, if you're in the ocean, sinking becomes a real threat, or if you're on land, fire and smoke inhalation become a real threat. And of course, the trifecta could happen, I suppose, where you're in a plane on fire in the ocean. After 2 minutes, that's it. Those first 2 minutes count, which is more time than I would have thought.
I think of how long it takes people to get off a plane, though, once it's landed.
Yeah, you could definitely be the unfortunate person stuck at the back of that queue of hundreds of people trying to get off.
Yeah.
And you know that there would be one person probably in a state of shock who would be reaching for their luggage and blocking the aisle.
Yes. Oh, inevitably. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, man.
Well, that's good. I think we're in a better position. Alex, I think you're in a better position now to survive on Saturday, whenever it is.
That's...
in the event of your crash. Your crash. Yeah.
God, this is going to be so dark if this podcast goes out and this is the last one.
Oh, no, Alex, no. Yeah, that won't happen. You'll be fine.
I feel like we're really tempting fate here.
Well, I was about to say, the good news is, Alex, that as of 2025, Statista, which, as you know, is a wonderful website that gathers statistics from all around the world, shows that number of fatalities, passenger and crew, in jet and turboprop aircrafts by decade is going down over time. In the 1970s, it was about 1,500. And in the 2010s, we were down to about 500, just over. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, that is really good. And also, there's a big difference, isn't there, between commercial airliners as well, and smaller planes, right? That has to be said.
Yeah,
much higher chance of there being an issue with a little passenger jet versus.
Also, location is going to be key as well. I mean, a lot of the fatalities that have happened in the past few years have been over Russia, and that kind of airspace in active combat zones. You know, Russia shot down that Kazakhstan plane last year.
Yeah, and it was the MH. Was it MH17? Was it the other one?
MH317, was it?
Yeah.
It was 317.
MH17.
370 is the one that disappeared, right? And
right, yeah.
And then was it 17?
Yeah. MH17 was the one that was shot down over Russia. Yeah. Or over eastern Ukraine, rather.
Alex,
need to make sure
showing the true colours there. Putin will be proud of you.
Well, I corrected it. I corrected myself. No, it's not over Russia.
You did mention, wasn't there a recent year where there weren't any fatalities, on commercial flights at least?
I think 2019 there was... So on commercial flights in 2019, there reported, I think, 40 accidents.
Right.
But only 2 that resulted in fatalities in terms of airliners.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And in that same period, though, when you looked at small aircraft, there were over 1,200 accidents.
Wow.
Of which over 230 had fatalities involved.
Sorry.
Indeed. And so we're looking at 25 times higher incidence of fatalities on when you're flying a small aircraft as opposed to a commercial aircraft.
I think also a key difference there is private versus commercial, because commercial flights, they've got quite rigorous standards that they have to meet, not just safety regulations, but also as competitive businesses, they want to maintain higher standards. So their pilots have to have certain qualifications. Whereas when you get to private flights, and this goes for private jets as well as for small charter planes that people might be flying, and you've got people who are much more inexperienced pilots, rich people who don't really necessarily care how experienced and qualified their pilot is. You might get pilots who weren't good enough to cut it for commercial airliners and therefore went into private business for themselves. And of course, the risk of the passengers themselves doing something on their private plane that might cause an accident. So yeah, the risks are much higher for private travel on
drink
trains.
Flying. Yeah.
Which then makes me wonder, is it therefore unfair to compare air traffic accidents with vehicle accidents? Road traffic accidents, because most road travel is private vehicles, right? If you actually compared, we don't have the statistic, I'm pretty sure we don't, but correct me if I'm wrong, how many accidents are there per licensed driver or pilot of a vehicle?
So you mean like a taxi driver or something?
Yeah, because like given the number of people with a driving license who can drive a car on the road, actually, what's the rate and the percentage of fatal accidents relative to the number of people actually driving compared to the number of people flying a plane? Is it actually comparable? I'm curious. It might not be. It might still seem like road travel is thousands of times more dangerous than air travel, but
I imagine it would be.
But maybe not. If you looked at it per qualified driver, per licensed driver,
I reckon the thing is, like, there's no kind of the people that get into like piloting their own planes in like a private way, I think the majority of them are going to be like absolute nerds, that progressed on from Flight Simulator and have the money to do this. I reckon most of them prefer the pre-flight checks to the actual flying, with their little Cessnas, and they're like, oh yeah, we're taking this up to 150 knots now. Do you know what I mean? I'm broad generalization, but I think that the type of person that would get into like private flying in a kind of hobbyist way would be very different to reckless driving and stuff.
I don't know what of course you've got to have your pilot's license, haven't you? But when you reach a certain, like the driving test, people are like, when you reach 70, you should probably have to retake your test, right? With pilot's licenses, the implications are so much worse of having like a 75-year-old behind the plane who's slightly, cognitive function slightly declining. I wonder if there's any kind of renewal that has to be taken on a.
Oh, I'm sure there must be, right? I don't know, but there has to be. Surely.
I don't know. I don't know if it's your own private plane.
Let's ask Harrison Ford.
That's a good yes.
After that, he must have had to have retaken his test or whatever. Surely, you'd think.
I guess it might vary from country to country.
Yeah,
makes sense.
But apparently, licenses in the UK, pilot licenses, can expire.
Okay.
Then you'd have to reassess for that. So that's something. But I don't know about the rest of the world. So how do you feel after that chat? And this goes to our listeners as well. Whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether you're watching us on YouTube, please comment below. How do you feel now that we've gone through all that? We've got some statistics, we've got some advice, we've got our personal responses to it, and we've hopefully educated you on some not only anecdotal examples of things that went terribly wrong or terribly right, like think of the Miracle on the Hudson. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Do you feel confident flying? And especially you, Alex, how do you feel right now about your imminent
I feel like a lot of this advice has actually been, and no offense to us and our podcast, because I like us and I like what we do, but I think the general advice out there, on an individual basis, how to survive a plane crash is a bit bloody useless. Like, so much of this is out of our control. It's like, oh yeah, maybe sit at the back, but we don't know for sure.
And you have to pay an extra 20 quid if you want to change your seats.
Make sure when you crash, you get off the plane. Yeah, obviously. But I think the actual stats, when you dig into it, I mean, it's a very safe form of travel, and that reassures me. I think what it is you can be told that air travel is so much safer than getting in a car, but it's out of your control in a plane. A lot of it is out of your control. You're putting your faith in the two guys at the front to pilot you, and you're putting your faith in the 200 people surrounding you in the steel metal container 30,000 feet in the air. And that, I think the elements that are out of your control is what freaks people out, or it freaks me out anyway, a little bit. I'm getting better at it, But yeah, I think what reassures me is learning what the sounds the plane makes as well, because you ever are on a plane and you hear like a ding or something and you're like, oh my god, well that's it, we're all gonna die. But just kind of getting used to all of those and looking at the cabin staff as well, because they've heard everything and they just when they're looking bored and slightly depressed, you're safe.
That's true.
Yeah. And as I say, that earlier tip of just looking on flight radar and reminding yourself how many other flights are just currently in the sky right now. Yeah, those are all my tips. But yeah, I mean, I feel slightly worse having discussed this, but I just don't like to think about it really.
Yeah. When I was recently flying, there's a checklist, isn't there, where you're like, okay, what are my odds of the odds of there being an issue increased or decreased by what's going on during this flight and where I'm at? It's like flying with a budget Asian airline. That's a tick in the box of potentially crashing.
You're right,
flying over Russian airspace, another tick. And so when I was thinking about this, because I was thinking about kind of the odds are so low, and I was like, actually, there's a few things not going so much in my favor here. But then you're like, wow, it's just even this airline is doing dozens and dozens of flights along various routes every single day. The chances are so low. But it's still just mad that we're in the sky traveling 600 miles an hour in what's essentially a tin can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing to relieve people is how much redundancy is on planes as well, and how the navigation systems are so extensive, and the kind of just everything that's automated, but and then backups for that automation and manual controls for things in case the automations break down. I think that if you
they're
ever incredibly complex.
If you ever want to compare how far things have come, you just have to look at those pictures of 1950s and 60s flights where there's loose wicker chairs on the plane. You're like, well, probably going to be all right.
Yeah. I feel fairly confident saying that flying is a mostly safe way to travel, but personally I can never shake the feeling of, I know statistically it's the safest way to fly, but this could be that statistic. This could be the flight that proves the rule. So there's always that paranoia in my mind. A paranoia that I do not have at all when traveling by train or by car. Just don't have it. I still personally feel the safest way to travel for me is trains. I just feel safe on a train. I don't know what it is. I just feel safe. And
I do. Yeah, I get that. I do as well.
Yeah,
I feel so relaxed on a train. It's nice.
Yeah. And luckily for me, and this is purely selfish, I have no intention to fly anywhere for most of my life. So it's not something I have to worry about, So, but I do feel for people who have concerns. But I think you can rest assured you're probably going to be okay, except, like Martin said, maybe pause before you book your flight just to think. Check flight scanner. Just make sure your route is in a safe part of the world. Make sure your airline is a trustworthy airline. And just hopefully you'll be okay as long as you make wise choices.
I mean, also, I do know that a lot of people there's a filter on Skyscanner, I think, where you can change the plane model. And a lot of people have been filtering out that new Boeing 737 MAX because that was the subject of a few crashes several years ago when they in the last couple of years. So maybe try and avoid that because Boeing is
Have you guys ever had any sketchy moments where things haven't gone completely right, whether that's been weather or other bits?
My second ever flight, so it was a return flight, so it was a school trip, so this is years ago now, and we went to Germany. Flight there was fine. I didn't like it, but it was fine. Flight back, as we were making the descent, I guess with hindsight, it was just the way the pilot did the controls. Maybe it was a co-pilot who... But suddenly the noise from the engine stopped. The flaps just went bang, and the plane just dropped. and like everybody kind of hovered up in their seats for a split second, and you could feel your stomach turn. And I genuinely, with my second ever flight, was like, "Oh my god, the engines are cut out and we're about to crash." But it was just, for whatever reason, the pilot, without warning, triggered our descent by just opening the flaps completely, which make a horrible noise, and we dropped quite considerably. And I wonder if it was maybe a trainee pilot who
you do get that more on short haul flights. Often, you get a bit of a
a bit wobbly.
I've only ever had one that was really sketchy, and that was when we landed in Iceland, and the landing gear, the tire, just burst.
What?
He just says bang, and then it went bang, 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 bang. When like the burnt out, busted rubber was just poof, poof, poof. And then it stopped in the middle of the runway and couldn't make it to the hangar or whatever, so we had to walk across the runway, and then like our luggage came like 2 days later.
2 days? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
So sorry, as in it was delivered.
It was delayed because
sorry.
I thought you meant stranded.
I thought you meant it fell out of the plane 2 days later.
Fortunately, it didn't fall out of the plane. But we had to wait a little time. But that was a bit sketchy. I think it genuinely was quite sketchy. Wow. I don't think it's a good thing, the time bursting.
That is genuinely sketchy. Does that count as like a crash? You were in a plane crash.
Yeah. I don't think I was in a plane crash.
Martin was in a plane crash.
That counts. That's
an incident. It's an incident. And this tiny, it was the size of a minivan, little lime green fire engine. It went Nino, Nino, Nino across the runway. It's like, what the hell's that thing going to do?
Make you feel a lot better about
it. Of course, it did nothing. Yeah, no, it was a little bit. It was a little bit sketchy.
Terrifying. Yeah.
No, I haven't. I'm fortunate enough that I haven't had any incidents, and long may it stay that way. Yeah.
I survived. I'm a survivor.
I did have one time. The plane landed, came in smooth as butter, like one of the best landings ever, and then the pilot just went on the intercom and said, "Hey everyone, that was my first time doing that." And everyone was like, "Hey!" That was his first landing. Yeah.
And then he crashed.
Or was he saying that was his first good landing?
Third plane, first time it's ever landed successfully.
I'm not even a pilot.
But I thought that was nice though. I'm glad he told us when we were on the ground and not when we're like, by the way, like 5 minutes earlier when we're like flapping about. Yeah. By the way, I've never done this before. Okay, thanks. See you on the ground.
Maybe he was about to, and the co-pilot like puts the hand on the intercom. And is like, don't, Bruce. Wait till after.
I think we're going to be okay, probably.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, let us know, actually, in the comments or in a review or whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on, what your flight experiences are, your scariest and best flight experiences. I'd like to know. And whilst we're on that topic, any comments from our lovely listeners that you'd like to respond to from the past few weeks since our last episode?
Absolutely. I've got a comment from Harpod Django Rose 9696. And this was in response to, I think we were commenting like, oh, is it a bit of a compliment or an insult that people say like they fall asleep to us, like listening to our voices on the podcast? We couldn't decide, but they say, don't take offense at any who fall asleep to your program. Spending time with you fellows is like being with our closest and safest friends, the ones who are a little bit interesting. You are a warm and cozy blanket on blustery day, which I was just like, oh. That's lovely.
That's gorgeous.
Although I can't imagine this episode is one that people like curl up with get all nice and cozy and listen about how to survive a plane crash. But I mean, maybe I don't know. But that was such a nice comment. So thank you.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. Well, I've got one from Katie Todd, who says, this was on the Nostradamus predictions, the 2025 cycle predictions, and says, I really enjoyed Martin's insights during this episode. Love you guys, been listening from the start. Of course, I was very, very present for that episode, wasn't I? Wasn't like I was away.
You said everything with your eyes, Martin, in that episode, yeah.
Exactly.
Your expressions said everything.
Yeah. The usual level of insight from me, I imagine.
There's a comment on our second channel, Uncovered, where all our video essays and mini documentaries, including our on-location stuff, such as our hunt for Dick Turpin and ghosts in New York, by Rick Seegers 193, who said, on the video, The Mysterious Death of Hitler's Niece, a little video I made about an enduring mystery with no obvious solution. Sorry. Rick Seegers says, your voice is very familiar. Did you used to do a show with two friends on conspiracy theories?
What?
And then S.I. Joni Yan replied saying, they did. And it was one of the best channels on the platform.
Oh,
really,
very kind.
That was a wonderful thing to say. Thank you. And welcome, Rick, to the club. I mean, I'm guessing you don't listen to the podcast, given given your comment. So you might not hear this, but
it's weird, isn't it? It's weird that we get comments like that even now.
It's nice that people are still stumbling across us, which is nice. Yeah, that is nice, but kind of random.
Yeah, very so recognizable, that voice. Very good. Very good.
That wasn't what I was fishing for, but yeah. Until next time, which hopefully will be sooner than this time, after the last time. That makes sense. We won't edit that out. Until then, and hopefully the three of us will be safe and sound after
I was going to say,
many journeys.
If it's a duo, something might have happened.
Yeah.
It's all right. You'll be fine. And we'll see you in the future. Bye for now.
See you later.
See you later. Bye.